I'm always trying to find better ways to answer your questions and provide more context. So what I'm going to do in this video is answer the questions that, so I asked in a post on YouTube the other day, just tell me what are your most pressing questions, and then upvote other people who have questions that you want me to address. So I did that. I got 357 responses. So thank you for that. And then I aggregated the responses in AI, and then it's telling me a top 10 list of your responses. So I'm going to go from the top 10, the least to the most important questions that you have. So the first one, number 10, is this: where are Ukraine's Flamingo missiles, and why haven't we seen major strikes with them yet? Well, you have, and Zelensky's talked about this, that there have been strikes with Flamingo missiles, but there aren't a lot of them because there aren't a lot of flamingos. Flamingos have been created, but they haven't gone into mass production in a meaningful way. They need the money to be able to make the missiles, and they need to set up the factories in order to do them. So they have some, they have worked, but they don't really have enough of them yet, as far as I understand from open source statements by Zelensky. Okay. Statement number, well, I would say 2, but this is actually 9. We're going backwards. Number 9, what happens to Belarus, Georgia, Hungary, Slovakia if Russia actually loses the war? Great question. Belarus is the most interesting of those. But if Russia loses the war, then it's like almost like the spell will be broken. And Georgia and other places, like I was talking to a history professor the other day, and he was talking about we were lamenting things that were going on in the United States, and I said, man, how do we get past, like, because there's MAGA over here and woke over there, and they're fighting with each other, and it's just terrible. I said, how do we get past this? And he said, we'll lose a world war. That's not the answer that you want to hear, but the same kind of thing could apply to Russia. If Russia loses the war, there's a big reset, and then Russia's no longer bullying all its neighbors. And so I think it'll break the spell. I think Belarus will be the most interesting one, because Belarus, I think, if things don't go that direction, may very well be absorbed into Russia when Lukashenko is no longer alive. Okay, number 8, why isn't the West doing more to counter Russian disinformation in the U.S. and Europe? Well, they are doing something, but there is clearly I've said this a number of times, there's a hot war, and then there's an information war, and then a political war, and an economic war, and so a cyber war. It's all, one's built on the other, and the West just isn't in war mode yet. I mean, they're not. Russia's on a war footing. The West is not. I think that explains what's going on there. Okay, number 7, can NATO or the U.S. intervene directly without triggering a nuclear war? I think the answer is yes. So not all wars turn into nuclear wars just because one of the powers has nuclear weapons. You can't go to that place necessarily. And okay, think about the U.S. in Afghanistan or Iraq. They couldn't just use nukes. I mean, they couldn't. Same thing with Russia's most recent wars. They couldn't use nukes. If they use nukes, they're a global pariah. Everybody's going to exclude them. Even those countries that are sympathetic to them, they won't be. So you just can't do it. Can you fight a limited war, though? And will they fight limited wars? Yeah. Even if the U.S. and Russia were at each other, it could very well be a limited war, not a nuclear war. Okay. Number 6, what is Ukraine's real endgame? Total victory, a ceasefire, a frozen conflict? Okay. I don't think Ukraine wants a frozen conflict. I think that Russia might be happy for a frozen conflict, because if they had a frozen conflict before, Ukraine can't join NATO if there is a frozen conflict on its territory. I don't think they want to ceasefire Russia. I don't think Russia wants to allow that to happen. Ukraine really wants to push Russia off of its territory. Now, I don't think they're going to be able to do that militarily. I think, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit, because somebody asked another question that's related to that. But Ukraine's real endgame is victory, where they're no longer under the thumb of Russia militarily or politically or economically. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Number 5, how long can Russia sustain this war economically and militarily before collapsing? Probably longer than you like. And I hate to say that, but it looks like Russia can sustain this for a good long time. They have some depth in their economy, but their economy seems to be fraying. I don't know that it's going to fall over, but I just see bad sign after bad sign after bad sign. But, Putin's going to get the money for the war machine from somewhere. So even if industries are collapsing and things like that, he'll nationalize Western industries or steal from the oligarchs or whatever in order to keep the machine running. That's my read of what's going to go on. So they can go for a good long time. Even though the people may very well be miserable because of the war, Putin can make it keep going. Okay, number 4. This is the one that I was saying the other question was answering. Does the West truly want Ukraine to win or just to keep fighting without losing? So the West wants Russia to not be a threat, and being degraded by Ukraine is a good thing. Depends on who you're talking about in the West. I think there are a number of nations that wanted to win. I think during the Biden administration, they wanted Ukraine to win, but they were happy for degradation of Russia as long as they weren't tripping over into a nuclear war, which Russia was saber rattling about. And so we were deterred, which is unfortunate. Okay, so that ties together with what's Ukraine's real end game. Ukraine wants to win. Now, how are they going to win? I think they don't win on the battlefield so much as they sustain the battlefield long enough in order to be able to win by causing such degradation in Russia economically that it triggers a political event that ends the war. That's my read of it. Now, there's a metaphor here. Hertzberg's two-factor model, like in business, in organizations, you have hygiene factors and you have motivators, and they're built one on top of the other. Hygiene factors are things like, I have a safe place to work. Motivators are like, my boss tells me good things and praises my work. Well, you're never going to be motivated. These motivators don't work if the hygiene factors are not there. Like you have to have a safe place to work, and then your boss says good things, and then that motivates you. Because if the hygiene factors, like you're getting shot at while you're at work, you're not going to be motivated to do your work. Okay, same thing. They have to sustain the battlefield in order to be able to win their way by degrading Russian energy and degrading Russian oil and things along those lines in order to cause the political event that ends the war. So battlefield, all Ukraine has to do is sustain, hold on, and not let Russia win, which it looks like they're doing, until they can cause Russia to knuckle under economically. So there's a horse race between those two factors, in my estimation. Okay, number 3, who or what replaces Putin if his regime falls? I have no idea. But when I look around, there's not a lot in the Putin circle of power that could actually replace him. There are some other dissidents that could be great choices, but I don't know how they would get the power. But within the Putin's circle or concentric circles of people that he is tight with, I don't see anybody that's not going to have the same kind of mentality that Putin has. Number 2, can Russia really maintain or deploy nuclear arsenal it claims to have? That's a great question. I don't know that its arsenal has been kept up, that it's actually functional. I'm afraid that if it tests a nuclear weapon, it's going to blow itself up and create a radioactive incident, not meaning to where it's going, but like where it is on the place, like where it's being launched from, or somewhere catastrophically along the way, or that sort of thing. I have very little faith that Russia's nuclear arsenal has been kept up. However, it's not the kind of thing where you want to find out accidentally, like whether it has or hasn't. So I wouldn't provoke it knowing that, maybe it has been, but I just don't know. And sometimes we have to be humble about these conclusions that we come to. In fact, most of the time we should be questioning our own conclusions rather than asserting this is the way it is, right? Okay. Last question, number 1. If Russia collapses, what will the West do about the humanitarian crisis and the danger of unsecured nuclear weapons? Well, so the last part, the unsecured nuclear weapons, is why most people, if they don't want Russia to collapse, don't want it to collapse. You don't want nukes going all over the world. The humanitarian crisis. This is the one that gets me. I want Russia to stay together long enough to have reparations of some sort, to get Ukraine's children back, to undo the damage that they've done. I was in a Zoom board meeting with my Patreon board members today, and we were just talking about exactly that. We were like saying, it should be that the Russian people have to go and actually physically rebuild Ukraine, not just pay reparations, but have to physically rebuild buildings, see what they saw. In the same way that after Germany collapsed and after Japan collapsed in World War II, they had to admit and see what was going on. There should be some kind of mandatoriness there. I don't know exactly how to make that happen, but they need to pay reparations as well. And they're sitting on one of the world's largest gas stations, so that's not going to be a problem. But they have to have been defeated in order to shake this imperialist kind of mentality that this is a good thing from their minds. All right, those are the top 10 questions that you had. Thank you for asking them. Great, intelligent questions. And some were variations of the same thing written a slightly different way. So thank you all for providing those questions. And I hope that this video was helpful. If it was, please consider giving me a thumbs up. Thanks for listening. I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.